Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to see so many of you tuned in. This is part 2 of our new owner series. In the first part, we discussed the buying of super yachts with 3 very experienced owners, and today we're talking charter. Everything from setting up your boat for charter, the importance of crew, and disruption in the marketplace. But why are we running this series? We have lots of owners watching, so in part it's about sharing knowledge and best practice. But we also hope for the super yacht professionals joining us today, there is an opportunity to take what you hear and apply it to your businesses. It's not often we get to interrogate 2 such experienced owners in a live setting. First, introductions. My name is Stuart Campbell, Editor-in-Chief of Boat International, and I am delighted to be here hosting this session, which forms part of our ongoing virtual boat show. We have new exhibitors to the show joining almost daily, so I urge you to go and have a look for yourselves. There are some great yachts available for charter over there. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. Today's session will be recorded and available later this week on demand, so don't worry if you have to leave early. Part 1 is also available to view now at the virtual boat show. Meanwhile, if you would like to tweet about today's event, please use the hashtag #BoatOwners. Importantly, we'll have time towards the end of the session for questions. You are able to submit them throughout the conversation. At the bottom of your screen is a chat button. Simply click on that and submit a question. The team behind the scenes will pass these on to me, and we will do our utmost to get to as many as we possibly can at the end. If you are having trouble throughout or at any time during the webinar, please email events@boatinternationalmedia.com or message the team through the chat feature, and they'll get back to you as quick as they possibly can. We'll be running more live sessions over the next few months with super yacht owners on various topics, and you can see them all here. Our next sessions will focus on refit and voyage. We would love to hear from you on any other topics you would like to hear discussed by super yacht owners. My email is coming up on screen, so please feel free to drop me a line. But today, it's all about charter, so let's meet our experts. John Caldwell joins us today from Monaco. He is one of Britain's best-known entrepreneurs and is the owner of the 73-metre yacht Titania, which, unusually, he bought at auction. It's actually a great story, and you can read an interview we did with John on the BI website. Titania is, of course, an incredibly popular charter yacht, starting at $500,000 a week. He bought the yacht in 2010 and set it up from day one as a charter machine, adding a second owner's cabin, a large beach club, and a gym, amongst other features. Great to have you here, John.
Thank you. Good to be here, Stuart.
Great stuff. Matt Voorhees is joining from Annapolis, right on the water, a lovely spot. Matt has packed a huge amount of big boat experience into a little over a decade. In that time, he has owned 4 super yachts. The first big boat he owned was a Westport, but he soon moved on to his real love, classic Fed ships. He has owned 3 to date, each of which he has refitted with charter in mind. His latest is the former Raslas, now renamed Broadwater, currently in the final stages of an extensive refit at Royal Houseman. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Right, now on to the questions. Let's start with the obvious. John, we'll start with you if we may. How has coronavirus affected your charter program?
Well, I think that's the same for a lot of businesses. You know, it's decimated it because how can anybody charter a yacht? So we had a really reasonably good winter season, and just as we were about starting to fill up the bookings for the summer season in the Mediterranean, Corona hit, and of course we had to either cancel or postpone all of those. And so, of course, halfway through Corona, perhaps around about April, May, we had 0 on the books for this summer. We have just picked up a 3-week charter for July, so you know we're off to start now, but we've already lost 2 months of the year. So it can only, from a charter aspect, now be a catastrophic year. But you know, it's nowhere near as bad as what happens to some businesses and some people. So my heart does bleed for some of the businesses out there that have lost. Look at airlines, you know, it's just cataclysmic for them.
Yeah, it is. And Matt, just a quick word on Broadwater. Obviously, the refit was delayed somewhat by everything that's going on. So can you just tell us a bit about what's going on with her and when you expect to see her on the water and chartering?
Yes, we had originally hoped to have the boat finished in late spring, and we're delayed with the shutdown that went on in Holland, and have been continued to delay because while work continues, it's socially distanced, so it's not as efficient. Although Houseman's been relatively good at packing multiple shifts in. So what gets accomplished in a day still gets accomplished in a day. It's just a 24-hour period rather than, 1 or 1.5 shifts like they would normally work. The boat saw light of day for the first time this week in almost a year. And she looked beautiful. People were blinded by the new paint, which, we've radically changed the look of the boat. It went from being its classic ketchup white to blue, like all of our boats are. And it's exciting to see it come out. It will launch in early August, and I will take possession of it sometime in the month of August. And because of Corona, we have no European charters, like John was saying right now. So the plan is to just have them come directly to the States. And then we'll meet the boat probably someplace in the Northeast and take it on its maiden voyage and use it ourselves as we get ready for the winter season. And
you're neither of you actually scared to take on a refit. Both of you have done that with charter in mind. And so perhaps can we just talk about what you've done to the boat at Houseman? How have you reorganized the boat to make it more charter oriented?
She was a lovely boat built by a gentleman who had never had a boat. And so we extended her by about 4 meters or 15 or so feet, and put a modern transom on what was a closed, almost canoe stern. So there's an approach to the sea, which today's certainly younger charters and family charters, which is our market, require. My crew is trained and very adept at handling water sports and toys of all sorts. So we have, a beach club, if you will, and that was a major change in heavy lift for this refit.
Yeah, you've added quite a significant stern extension to create the beach club. And was that done with charter in mind because your market demands that immediate access to the water?
Yes. And we tow toys too. So, we have large, this boat will have both a 55-foot wire and a 38-foot wire that goes with the boat, both of which can be towed. Although I think towing a 55-foot boat seems probably a little ambitious. So with the closed stern, that didn't seem safe to me even, let alone accommodate what we need to have happen in getting on and off the boat and so forth. So I always say that I'm probably my pickiest customer. I use the boat. I want the crew to use the boats. I make them sleep in the guest cabin so that they really see how all of this should work. We have I think a great reputation because of some of that ingenuity.
Yeah. The Beach Club edition is interesting because, John, you did something very similar in the 2012 refit. And you added a beach club, or at least extended it and made it bigger because the boat went from 68 to 73 meters. Is that right?
Yeah, it went from 68 to 73 meters as a result of a big piece of steel work that Lurson put on the back, which I have to say was done so amazingly seamlessly that even I, knowing that it's been welded on, can't find the welds. I have to credit Lurson for being amazing engineers because the job that they've done is second to none. It's just an amazing job. But I did that because the boat had got a tiny rear platform. It had no beach club. And as Matt was saying, there's not really, you weren't in touch with the sea. Wherever you were on that boat, you were a long way out of the way. But I also did a huge amount of other work to it because I completely refitted the second deck down. My boat's got an extra deck to most boats. It's a huge volume even for a 73-meter boat. And the very top deck I turned into partial gym and partial viewing station. And the next deck down, I turned into a second owner's VIP type cabin, which is a beautiful cabin with 270 degrees panoramic views. So I really transformed the boat, and of course it gave it an extra cabin. So we've now got 2 owners' cabins, one with an office, the other just with a phenomenal view, but very, very beautiful and spacious. And then we've got a VIP and then 4 other cabins. So the boat, for its size, is probably second to nothing on the water. And my objective all along was to approach this in 3 ways to make it the best charter boat on the market. And to get that was a 3-pronged attack. One was an amazing accommodation kept to absolutely perfect standard. The second was to provide every facility I could possibly think of. So I built a water park, which was sort of my thinking, buying inflatable platforms and attaching to them climbing frames, trampolines, chutes, and every feature I could possibly find. And we've got the biggest chute in yachting, which attaches to the very top deck. It's quite tempting, actually, when you look vertically down. So I did all of that to try and make the facilities the very best. But actually, beyond all of that is the crew. If the crew are not super efficient, super friendly, and attractive in every way, in personality and looks and in demeanor, then the boat will fail. And that is something I'm really, really critical of. And our references over the years have been second to none. We get amazing references all the time, amazing repeat charters, but I'm never complacent. Every time I go on that boat, I find plenty of faults. The average charter guest probably wouldn't, but I'm looking all the time for what can we do to that boat to improve it, to make the service levels better, and to just really improve everything about it.
I'm interested in why you made the choices that you did. Obviously, adding the second owner's cabin so you can have 2 principal charterers makes a lot of sense. The beach club makes a lot of sense. Who was advising you through this process? Or did you just look at the market and think, well, that boat's got that boat's got that, mine's got to have everything?
It's a business, Stuart. You know, it's a business like any other. And you look at your customers. What do your customers want? Okay, a bit of it's your own vision, because you don't know for sure what your customers want. But if you look at the toys I've got on board, what customers wouldn't want those toys? Well, maybe a very elderly charter team, but we've got everything for the elderly as well. But we've got everything for the young. So if people want to bring 10 kids on board, we've got everything to keep those kids happy. And my crew, I think they're a bunch of young kids, actually, because they love playing on the water park with the kids. So if you bring kids along, they get a great time, amazing time. You know, the crew might not be squabbling the decks quite as much as they should be, but they're certainly giving the kids a great entertainment. So it's all really to do with common sense, like any business is. You look at what the customer may or may not want and provide everything for everybody in order to give the best possible experience.
So crew is obviously a key pillar to creating a good charter program. And I'm really lucky to have experienced some hospitality on your both your boats and meet your crew. And they've always been amazing. But Matt, perhaps, how did you, I guess, learn to tune your crew to such an extent? Is it just an experience thing? And how did you get your crew to the point where they are a finely tuned charter unit?
Well, but failure first. It takes some rotation. There are things on the water that are different than on land, and some of the priorities you would have in our companies or our businesses are going to be completely different on the boat. So first of all, it's important to understand that and make room for that, and allow yourself to be trained and understand that. But once you get a core of really great people, it almost self-selects.
We just got a slight buffering issue there.
Could I just say I was going to
this doesn't work.
Try and interject by saying I agree absolutely with Matt there. We started off with failure, and you fail and you work. Oh, Matt's back anyway. But you start off with failure, and you realize where your failures are. And I also agree with Matt absolutely that running a boat is totally different to running a land business, because it's a transient community and you've got to get up to an amazing standard with a fantastic morale in a confined environment as fast as possible, knowing that you're going to lose them in a couple of years' time on average. So it really is a different business, and you've got to understand that in order to run it properly.
So how involved then do you have to be as an owner to make sure your crew are the best they can possibly be? Matt, perhaps you first.
Yeah, so I think it's important to get that core group right, and then you're less involved. I prefer to be less involved because I have the people who are in the industry and understand it all. But at first I was very involved. So it's a good equilibrium now.
So you delegate a lot of responsibility to hiring to your skipper, presumably?
Yes, I have 2 captains and they're wonderful. And the team of the first officer, captain, and chief stew is a great recipe for us. They're tremendous longevity in our program. And sad will be the day when they don't work for me anymore. And I think you see this a lot. Actually, boats will come up for sale because it's not fun for the owner anymore, because they had a great A-team crew. They've aged out of it, and it's painful to start that all over again.
Yeah. So John, you built that kind of core crew as well. But how important is things like, how do you got to keep them happy? Obviously, you've got to keep your A-team happy. So rotation plays a part in that. So can you tell us how you arrived at that journey with some of your senior crew and how you keep your happy?
Yeah, we were introduced rotation some time ago for that very reason, to give longevity amongst the senior people. But it's not just that. I think, when you set phenomenally high standards like I do, there's 2 aspects to it. One is that people find it difficult to achieve the standards that you require. But when they do, they're incredibly proud. And I tell my people that I want our yacht to be the best on the water. I want them to be the best on the water. And they should take huge pride in that and just watch the tips come rolling in. And my boat pays phenomenal tips, absolutely phenomenal tips. It doubles the average stewardess's wages every year. And so there's not just the pride of doing a job phenomenally well, which they should do regardless of the tips, because that pride is worth something in all of our lives for all of us. But also that pride then translates into a really big tip situation, which of course is then the real icing on the cake for people, because they earn such a lot of money.
Yeah, well, after that, you might get a few more CVs through the post, John.
We're never short of applicants. It's a very, very busy charter yacht, very, very busy. In the year, we probably do a total of 20 weeks. So that's including me. So it's including me, and I do 3 charity charters a year where I've donated the boat for charitable causes, and we sell off and give the entire proceeds to Caldwell children. But the total comes to about 20 weeks. So the crew are very, very, very busy, but that also keeps them honed and keeps them interested, and they're well paid. So it just creates a phenomenal environment, but a very busy one, and a busy environment where people know that they've got to perform at top level. So only top level people want to be there. But the top level people that are out in the industry always apply to Titania for a job, because they know they'll be a part of one of the best boats on the water. So I have to be careful of you there, Matt, because I'm not saying we're better than you at all, but we have to be the best on the water that we can be. And the crew need to know that, and they need to earn a lot of money as a consequence of working their socks off morning, noon, and night to be the best.
Thanks, John and Matt. So just a quick word on the rotation. Where does that begin and end for your senior crew? Obviously, you've got 2 captains, and so how far down the chain of command do you allow rotation for your positions? I think we've got a few issues there. John, perhaps I can...
Stuart,
sorry, go ahead. We've got you back.
That's okay. Sorry. We have a rotation from captain to chief stewardess. So first officer, engineer, and stewardess, along with the captains. I would tell you that I think that if I had to do it over again, my crew's not going to want to hear this, but one of those, and probably it's the first officer, we shouldn't have rotation, so it can be the glue that holds all of it together. That's the way it's situated right now, and it's hard to go back.
I agree with Matt absolutely. Again, you know, it's those three people and not the first officer. The first officer needs to be the person there that's coordinating, but also they're aspiring to be captain. So everything to work harder for and longer hours, so that when they make captain, they can too go on rotation. So, you know, I agree absolutely with you that you just need those three really key positions and look after those people, make sure that they stay with you.
And so that's your kind of regular charter crew. But what is the expectation now from charter guests about specialists on board? Do you need the water toy pro, the former Olympian Olympic wakeboarder, or, you know, the best masseuse in the world? You know, so what else do you need to carry now to make sure your program is the best it can possibly be? John, how about you first?
All of the above. So we've got water sports instructors. I've got 2 beauticians who can do everything from massage to nails. 2 beauty rooms. So one for the for the owner's cabin, and one that's for the rest of the guests. All the water toys I can possibly find, and crew that love water sports and love doing that. And let's face it, which young guy is going to prefer scrubbing the decks to going and taking guest water sports or sailing? Or we've got one of those, I forget what you call them, those boards that you stand on with water jets that come off your water skis, those sorts of things. I mean, just all the toys you can get, sea bobs, just everything to give whatever set of guests that you've got a really great time. We've also got 4 different dining venues. Well, we've got 5 actually, but there's 4 that I love. We've got a beautiful round room at the back with a huge round walnut table, which will seat 12 people. And that's a beautiful indoor dining experience. We've got the main dining table as well, which is 12 people. And then outside, we've got 3 outdoor dining areas, one on the main deck, one on the second deck, and one on the top deck. The top deck has got probably 300-degree views, and that's my favorite experience. So it's really creating something for everybody. The chef that I employ, I spend a lot of time talking to and coaching, because I'm extremely passionate about food, and I do a lot of cooking myself. So I've done a lot of coaching of my chefs to get the food tweaked and added some of my sort of own personal recipes to it. But also, because I'm a bit of a health freak, I encourage the chef to be very, very health conscious. And we've got that with my current chef, has taken on board my passion for health with a vengeance. And so if somebody comes on and they want to be on a health farm, it's fantastic. If they want to eat burger and chips, he probably does the best burger and chips in the world. So, you know, he does everything depending on what somebody wants.
Yeah. So, Matt, where do you find these specialists? And do you have them on board the whole time, or can you bring them on and get them off? How does that work?
Well, my chief stew has tremendous relationships all over the world. So we have some specialists aboard, but we tend to bring from land the very best where they exist. And those things get booked weeks, if not months in advance. And having the experience of years of sort of culling and curating that experience from land-based operators is also very important. And we have a whole spa on board that we're able to staff with these very familiar faces that come from dry land.
John, you mentioned your water park earlier. I've seen your water park. It is a vast inflatable construction that trails off the back of Titania. I bet the crew are massive fans of putting that out and taking that away. But
you're right, Stuart. It is a huge job. It really is a huge job. But I think the crew don't look. They're paid not to mind it. It is a big job, but it creates a lot of fun, and it's only done when there's kids on board generally. So it's not like they're doing it every day, and it's only done in calmish seas. So, and when it's done, there'll probably be half a dozen kids playing on it. They'll get to play on it with the kids. And it's a fun time, and it all provides the joy of the boat, because the adults might be sitting in the beach club, the kids are all very happy, the crew are happy. And if you can create this variety that give crew excitement. I mean, for instance, we get our crew dressing up all the time in different costumes. So we have theme nights. And the more we can create a party environment for everybody, the better. I even tasked one of the crews about a year ago to do an imitation of the Spice Girls. So the 4 of them came on and did the Spice Girls. So we get them to entertain the guests as well. It's special for them because it's great fun, so it makes a fun time for everybody and gives the crew variety.
And so how does it work? So does your captain come to you and say, I've seen this latest toy, we need to get it because it's got to be, we're going to shoot it, come part of the charter brochure, the marketing of the boat, etc. Do you, does responsibility lie with the captain? In
my family office, I've got a guy that runs my yachts for me, but I'm heavily involved. The captain would be heavily involved, and he would be heavily involved. And I've just, for instance, I went to Necker Island and started kite surfing. And I thought, well, we really need kite surfing on board, but we do need an instructor for that. So that's a bit more complicated. But any new toy that I think is feasible, then we do a feasibility on it. Well, is it safe enough? Can we really realistically do that and introduce that particular hobby onto the boat? But, wherever possible, we'll introduce whatever we possibly can to give the guests variety. We've got cycles on board, and we've got a huge range of fun on board the boat.
I personally feel, John, I don't know about you, but I think we should be given a commission for the toys that our charter guests buy after they've been on the boat. Or we should get them for free. I've personally sold, I think, 10 or 11 e-foils because we were one of the first boats to have these things. And my neighbors here in Annapolis, each on both sides of me, have bought one because they thought it was so fascinating. We were very early to sea bobs 10 years ago. All of this stuff, people see it, they buy it. If you were smart with your product placement, certainly a super yacht is a good place to put something that you're trying to introduce to the market, the fun marketplace.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you there, Matt. So if you can negotiate commission, the two of us, we'll share it.
So far, it's only gone one way, which is out of my bank account. So,
so where you do 20 weeks, but that includes your use every year, John. At least that's the ambition. But where do you draw the line between charter and personal use? For instance, if you say, well, I want that week in August, but someone comes in and says, well, I'm going to give you more than the charter rate for it, will you change your plans and give the boat to the client?
Yeah, always. I actually work the other way around. I tend not to book anything until I'm fairly certain I'm not going to get a charter, which is rare anyway. So it's usually a week in September and a week in June, because the rest of the season we're fully packed out. But I don't mind that because I'm not really a great sun lover. I do a lot of cycling, and if I come to the south of France, for instance, in July and August, it's a bit hot for me, to be honest. So I prefer out of season where I can go and cycle for 4 or 5 hours and feel comfortable rather than being fried under the midday sun.
Yeah. And Matt, do you take a similar philosophy? If you
absolutely,
personal and charter and commercial?
You almost have to if you're going to be in the top shelf of the charter operators. There might be a week that's untouchable if I've arranged things with a bunch of friends, or if there's a business situation, but then I'm chartering the boat for those things, and I look at myself as a customer. And so that adds to the weeks that John is talking about. I will say, a boat that isn't used or isn't busy isn't going to have a crew that is completely on point, to John's earlier comment. And so the best crews want to be busy. They don't do well if the boat is sitting at the dock.
So what else are we missing in the?
I was just saying that is absolutely right. It's like any athlete. Any athlete has to keep training and keep training. And you can always be better at what you do. But to be better, you've got to be in practice and you've got to be trying to perform at the peak service of your game. So a crew does absolutely have to be active.
So active crew, top notch, with the senior positions rotating, all the toys under the sun. beach clubs, access to the water. So what are we missing in the kind of the magic charter formula? Is there anything we haven't discussed so far?
Well, John talked about it briefly, but the chef is obviously very important, and it's the toughest job on the boat, if you ask me. They're up first, and they go to bed not last, but they have to be prepared for service very late into the evening for people who are up late or want to party. So, the food is obviously a vital component to making this work. And I have, over time, seen people get ever more specific with their dietary requirements. And so you have to have a chef that's willing to yield to those. These people are paying a lot of money. And I want them to be pleased. And if they're not, the chef's not going to last.
Yeah. Well, we actually wrote a feature recently about how important the chef has become on board now, second only to the captain almost. And John, you mentioned your chef. Do you get involved personally in the hiring of the chef?
Absolutely, yeah. I do the interviews because there's a lot of questions that I've got because of my passion for food. And because I've innovated so many recipes myself, I can test them on how you might do. I mean, one of my favorite questions is, how do you take an ordinary steak and turn it into something that is tender and delicious? How do you do that without anybody knowing that you've touched it? And I have my own recipe for doing that. No chef has ever answered it correctly yet. So if any of your listeners have got the answer to that, what I would dare bet is the only listener that will have the answer to that is somebody who's worked for me. Or somebody who's worked for me and given my formula away.
Well, everyone watching can submit their answers to that question in the chat box. And also, if you've got any questions for our guests today, do make sure to type them in. So what is a successful, obviously we won't count this year. It's not a great one, as everyone's very aware, but in an un-pandemic affected season, what does good look like to you? Do you hope to break even on the expense of the charter yacht? Do you even hope to turn a profit on the program? Matt, how about we go to you first?
Well, break even would be victory for me. I don't look at it as a profit center, but break even, which we generally do, is an important milestone. Like John was saying, Europe for me in the summer is a place I might use the boat in the season, maybe a week or 10 days. And then I use it in the shoulders, which I far prefer, not only for the temperature, but I'm not much for crowds. So the summer is Med based, and the boat is chartered the entire summer generally. And then when it crosses, it's more my time to use it at our place in the Bahamas or further south in the Caribbean.
John, how about you?
We make a substantial profit, excluding my charter and excluding the charity. My charter, if I have to pay for the charter because it's a company, but I don't include it in the P&L from a point of view of my own accounting because I'm looking to make profit out of third-party charters. If I had mine in, which of course I have to do for tax purposes, that puts another 1.5 million onto it, and the charity I don't have to add in because it's a gift, So the charity is about over another 1 million, so it'll be about another 2.5 million on top of the profit that we already make. So we are extremely successful, but I think that does go down to the fact that the yacht is so unbelievably flexible, and we've got such a phenomenal reputation built up over years. And so we're able to charge what's probably not quite a premium, but it's certainly top money. But people are prepared to pay it because they know when they come on my boat, they're going to get a phenomenal experience. And if they go on another boat, which may be 100,000 euros cheaper, but if they don't get the level of service or the level of crew or the fun, still paid a fortune and had a poor experience.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the subject of money, let's turn to a slightly more contentious topic, and that's the fact that in the last few years, we've seen companies coming into this marketplace trying to disrupt it by bringing a slightly Airbnb element to yacht charters and linking owners directly with charterers digitally and basically cutting out the brokerage community. I was just wondering if I could get your thoughts on those those kind of initiatives. Matt, why don't we start with you on that one?
Sure. So let me say this: expertise is important in anything you do, and we all in our professional lives pay for advice on items that we don't know or understand fully. So to that end, brokers are helpful in the charter market. I think this will level out, though, much like the real estate market. And you will go to your rep and say, I want to charter that boat because I've looked at it online and that's the one I want. The brokers will know more about the crew. And as we've said during this conversation, crew is the single most important. I would rather have a top shelf crew and a crappier boat if I were a charterer than the other way around. And so that institutional knowledge resides with the brokers generally. And I don't know how that's going to transfer to the direct marketplace or the disruptive marketplace that you're talking about. And it's important. Yeah.
The repository of knowledge in these brokerage houses is vast and hard to, you don't learn it overnight, obviously. John, what are your thoughts on these disruptors in the marketplace?
Yeah, well, it's the same point, I think. It's the expertise, and the brokers have got a lot of expertise, but also they've got a web of hundreds of small brokers who may only have one or two clients that put the boats through. So the whole network is like a great big huge network of connections, and all of those connections are necessary to give you a full charter season. So in that sense, they certainly add value, especially where there's expertise. And my particular broker, Burgesses, I think have done a great job for me, a really, really good job. But we do pay a lot of money, and I think disruption in the marketplace will come. It does to every marketplace, especially where there's big margins. But of course, brokers do also have big overheads to run a very professional operation. So it's difficult to forecast exactly because it's a fragmented market. You've got thousands of the brokers who've just got do one or two charters a year. And then you've got the main brokers who probably do 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever it is. So I think it's going to be quite a difficult market for digitalization to disrupt, but I'm sure some element of it will happen.
Yeah, I think that's right. You mentioned leveling off in your answer, Matt. I was just wondering if you could develop that idea a bit more. What exactly that means? Do you think ultimately some of these brokerage houses, already some of them are responding and launching new digital initiatives to improve the efficiency of the charter process? Is something like that? You mean that there will inevitably be an effect on how boats are chartered?
There will be. Look, I think it needs to be easier. And there's a lot of opaque and antiquated maritime law that goes into chartering. In various geographies, how charter is treated. The typical customer doesn't know anything about that, and so we should work on making that easier. In Europe. With that constantly changing and treatments constantly moving around, it's difficult, certainly for American clients, to wrap their heads around all of the overhead premium that goes into that marketplace. So there are chunks of regulatory issues that I think need to be addressed and help to make this a smoother and less painful process. I think it's interesting in the charter market. There's a piece of expertise as it relates to crew and institutional knowledge that's super important. But when you go to the brokerage market at large, I think that's where you're going to see more and more leveling out, and the strongest and the most those with the most expertise will survive.
Yeah, but there's definitely something can be done about making the process easier. Is that fair? We just lost you a bit again there, Matt.
How about now?
Yeah, perfect.
People who are good at their jobs, whatever those jobs are, will be rewarded with economic benefit at the end. But this will become more level, I think, and to the extent that it does, people will understand that there's more business to be had. You make it easier, people will come.
Yeah, but making it easier wouldn't affect your program, John. You're already turning people away.
Right.
Well, I would like some more winter charters, to be honest. So if anybody out there can give me some more winter charters, I'd love that, because the boat is utterly flat out in the summer in the Mediterranean. No spare time to fit anybody in. But in the winter, we've got plenty of time. In fact, that's where I do all my charity charters. So it's a great time for my charity charters, because it doesn't really cost me a lot of money. It keeps the crew trained, and we make over £1 million a year for charity. So it's a great time to do that.
Well, actually, that leads us rather neatly onto one of our last points, and that's destinations. Matt, your Broadwater is very much a med charter yacht. John, I know in the last few years you've sent Titania around the place. You were in Asia fairly recently. How did that work out on the charter front?
Well, I think the problem is wherever you take the yacht for the winter, it's not going to do very well. You go to the Caribbean, there's a huge amount of yachts and not very many customers, but more customers than, say, for instance, in Asia. If you go to Asia, there's very few customers and very few yachts. So whether you go to Asia and scratch around trying to find a customer, or whether you go into the Caribbean and you're competing with 100 other boats, it's a difficult market in the winter wherever you are. But I actually love Thailand. I think it's massively underrated. I've sent the boat there several times, and actually waking up next to James Bond Island or any of the other islands that are looming out of the water, vertically out of the water, is quite spectacular, and it makes a huge difference than going to the Caribbean. So I will continue to do Thailand, but not every year. The problem is it takes longer to get there and it costs a lot more money. So you need to really be certain you're going to get a few charters. But also, if you're not careful, it can make you late coming back for the Mediterranean season. And the Mediterranean season really is sacrosanct, because that's where all the charters take place.
Yeah, absolutely. It affects downtime as well, and maintenance and all those things. Matt, is there any other parts of the world you're eyeing up, or do you think it's pretty much Med is the hotbed, Caribbean's your time? Is there any other parts of the world that you are promising from a charter point of view?
Well, so my son is 9 years old, and I think within a year or two we'll probably do Galapagos, just because he'll be a strong enough athlete and swimmer to be able to handle the water there. And enjoy that trip. So that's a bucket list for us, and we'll go. I have friends that have gone with their child, and it was just a marvelous experience. I've been there before, but I was not a parent then. My favorite cruising ground in the world is the Bahamas. I love the water there. I love the island. I love the culture, and so we tend to stay close to home.
John, would you ever go further afield than Asia, South Pacific? Maybe it's tricky.
Funny how much in common, Matt, have I got, because the Galapagos is also my key destination. But I'm only planning to do it when I can get charters, and I know it's very restricted at the Galapagos, but I want some charters to make it worth doing, to make it worth going, rather than just take it solely for myself. So, but one year we will, I'm sure, manage to put a charter itinerary together so that the Galapagos works commercially, and then I'll get my opportunity to do it as well.
You'll also see an increase in charitable, the price they get at auction, John, for the charitable gifts. Everyone wants to go to the Galapagos, so it's part of our planning that we'll do some donations when we do that trip.
Take your own boat to the Galapagos when you went, Matt?
No, I chartered a boat that had the capacity of maybe 12 people.
Because it's very restricted on charters, isn't it? I'm not even sure you can charter your boat there I know I can go owner.
You can. It just requires a ton of work in advance. I mean, the planning is a multi-year process before you even go.
I better start planning soon then.
Just make sure you guys aren't there at the same time, or else the competition will be fierce. We're drawing to the end. That was a very quick 45 minutes, but we do have some questions coming through, so I'm going to pitch those to you now. Top of the list: do repeat customers influence your itineraries for the following year, particularly further afield? John, why don't you field that one?
Yes, absolutely. But any customer influences our itinerary, because it's all to do with where's the demand and what people. So, and repeat customers are really important, but new customers are vital as well. They're the lifeblood of the future. So we treat every customer the same. We want to win them. We want to do the best we can for them. And of course, if we make an itinerary fit around their requirements, we absolutely will do.
And Matt, I know you work with a lot of repeats as well. Does that ring true for you as well? Yes,
I would echo exactly what John said. You're not going to move an entire program around a 1-week charter, but if there's a relationship where you can plan a season and start someplace and finish another place, the best operators are going to try to accommodate that.
Thank you. One directed to you here, John. Does Mr. C have an opinion about the recent changes to co-broker commission splits imposed by Burgess on smaller houses?
Oh my gosh, I don't know what that is. So I presume that Burgess are giving us a lower commission on that basis, on the basis of that question. But I didn't know about it. Is that right, Stuart, that they're giving a lower commission?
I don't know.
You don't know? Oh, well, none of us know. But if we assume that that is the case, what do I think about it? Well, I think it's whatever. We're in a commercial world, and if Burgess have got sufficient yachts to give them that degree of power that they can trim the commission down for the smaller broker, I guess that commercialism is just the reality of life, and all businesses are there to make the best profit that they can for themselves, providing they behave morally and ethically. And and if they're just behaving commercially, that's their choice. But I would operate a word of caution there, that if they have done that, of course, it is going to make smaller brokers likely to move away from Burgess if they can. And if that is the case, I could lose charters. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a good move, but I don't know the details, so it's not fair for me to comment any further.
Yeah. Without the small print, it's a little bit hard to take that one further. Matt, one for you. So actually, I think I know the answer to this question already. So are you planning to charter your yacht this summer? I think that's a no. Is that right?
That's correct. We actually have had to cancel the charters we had on the books because the boat's late. And it will deliver. Of course, there isn't a charter right now. I would love to be visiting the boat, and I haven't since February because of the immigration situation. So no charter, unfortunately.
But would that influence your decision to charter in the Caribbean, for instance, to make up some of that ground?
I think we'll see a bump in Caribbean charters this winter because people weren't able to do their normal summer fun on a boat. At least I hope, because we'll be there. So,
well, there's a lot of talk about a bumper Caribbean season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how this matures. I was, as you know, I was on a charter when the crisis, the pandemic really began to heat up, and we had to stop the charter and leave St. Kitts. It was the last place we could get out of, and so it's going to be interesting. Application of all sorts of things, including cancellations and clauses. I think we're going to be well served if people are reasonable and yield to this pandemic and the next couple phases of it.
Yeah.
Advice on that, Stuart. So it sounds like I'll be coming to the Caribbean to enjoy some of that bumper. So I look forward to some more competition.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. Brilliant. So we have one more question. What is your relationship with yacht brokers? Do you frown upon hearing the word broker? Our experience is that only a small number of brokers are really professional and knowledgeable. John?
What does that mean? Do I frown? Am I dissatisfied with Burgess, for instance?
No. There's a commentary on Burgess. It's not at all. It's just that maybe it's about some negativity associated with the market, with brokers generally. I think that's what it's about. And is it your experience that only a few are very professional and knowledgeable?
Well, I think that's true of no matter who, whether you get a plumber, a doctor, or there's 10% of people that I want to employ and no more. And it's the top 10% of people. And there will be a lot of brokers out there that are appalling. I don't know who they are, and I'll never find out because I'll never use them. All I know is I've used Edmiston and they were pretty good. Burgess are doing a great job, so I'm very happy with their professionalism. But I know there will be brokers out there who do a shocking job. I find that the brokers that we deal with are very professional, not just Burgess, but the sub-brokers, and they take really seriously the quality of the boat, because they may only have 2 or 3 customers that provide their living, and they cannot afford to send somebody on a bad boat. So that sort of works to our favor, really, because we've got such a good reputation. Those smaller brokers know that they can send people our way with confidence. And that in itself is providing professionalism to the customer, as well as benefit to me as the owner. So I think there's a lot of good brokers, but there will be a lot of awful ones, I know.
Yeah. Matt, I'm going to chuck this last one at you. One more question. What is your best advice when you're entering a refit based on your vast experience? And it is vast.
Project manager. And if anyone wants to contact me, I'd be happy to give referrals or confirm bad experiences and good ones. But it goes to what John's saying. I only want to work with the best. I'm happy to pay for expertise and the best, but then you have to deliver. And that's how we run our businesses. That's how we run the boat. And so I would say great yard, pedigreed yard is a great place to start. But without the organization and the drive of a wonderful and experienced project manager who probably has relationships at those yards, you won't be as well served.
Yeah, I guess it all boils down to quality people on board and working with quality people in shipyards and the brokerage community as well. I think that was
our message today. Yeah.
Before we leave, John, perhaps this is a great opportunity for you just to mention, given that there's so many yacht owners watching, your charity.
Yes. Thank you for that opportunity, Stuart. I'd just like to say just very, very briefly about Caudwell Children. I founded Caudwell Children 20 years ago, and the objective was to help every child in the UK with any major illness that they couldn't get help anywhere else through the NHS or through other charities. Up to yet, we've helped 50,000 children, but we've also set up the Caudwell International Children's Centre, which specialises in autism. And we're going to start helping families all over the world, rich or poor, who've got autism. Of course, the rich families will pay for the service, which will help to pay for the poorer families that come along. But we have a considerable amount of expertise in autism and other illnesses related to infection like pans pandus and so on. So we've got a ball on the, I think it's the 26th of September, although you might need to check on that. And we've got a charity cycle ride on the 25th in Monaco, both in Monaco. So we would really love to see you there. Even more importantly, we'd love to see you donate and transfer children's lives yourself and help make a huge difference. And so If you do come along, please do tell me that you saw me on this webinar and introduce yourself so we can have a chat. I don't really know many boat owners, so it would be great to get to know a few more of you. Like now I've met Matt, and I really hope Matt and I can get together sometime and chat and probably have dinner together. So, hopefully there'll be more opportunities with other boat owners to do that in the future. But please start off by coming to our Monaco events on the weekend of 25th September.
And we can help make introductions or link people. So everyone saw my email a bit earlier. So if I can help in any way, just drop me a line. John and Matt, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's incredibly generous of you to give so much of it. And I want to thank everyone for watching. I think it's been a great hour, and I hope you found it interesting. Please feedback. There's a feedback form coming your way soon. So be honest and candid, because that's how we improve these sessions, and we can better share best practice and knowledge around the industry, so we can just generally up the standards of everything that we do. We hope you can join us at the next session, which we're talking about refit. I might try and convince Matt to come back for that one. We'll see. Matt will talk about that. That's on the 16th of July. You can register for that shortly, I think, once you sign off for this. And then we'll be talking about Voyage on the 30th of July. And that's all about setting your boat up for big passage-making expeditions. And we'll have some great speakers for that as well. That's it from me. Thank you so much for taking part once again. And we'll see you at the next one.